energy, and welcome to Anchored and Devoted. We are so glad that you decided to come on by and put us in your ear holes today.
That's right. I'm anchored. He's devoted. There you go.
There you go. Welcome. Hey. Hey.
Okay, I gotta do something. I gotta give a shout out to a lovely couple that comes to Grace, who listens to our podcast. The husband came to me on Sunday and was like, "Hey, I ran a personal best for a 5K over the weekend."
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm gonna call him 21 because he got it done in 21 minutes.
That's fantastic.
The over a 3-mile run, and he was excited about our episodes as far as us talking about uncomfortable things, as well as he said he enjoyed our foolishness. So I'm giving a shout out to number 21, and there you go.
Going number 21, PR, always something to be proud of. That's excellent. That's sorry, PB.
There you
PB,
go.
PR, same thing, whatever. Well, today we're going to continue. Actually, this is a little bit different in that. So the topic here is today is June 3rd, June 2nd. What day is it? June 2nd.
No, and June 3rd. You were right.
June 3rd. Thank you. Not tracking. Obviously, the kids are coming out of school in a day, and life is falling down around our ears as parents. But the conviction of former President Donald Trump has come down in the last couple of days, and Dave and I are just going to talk about it. Without I don't know, there's not a point that's being driven here. This is just Dave and I responding in real time with the idea that at some point down the road, our kids are likely going to listen to this. And I think this is an inflection point. And Dave and I, living through this inflection point and responding to it, will be able to pass this conversation on to our kids and say, hey, this is what we were thinking. Maybe we were right, maybe we were wrong. We don't know. Time will tell. But we want you to have the benefit of where we were in this time and space. So that's what today is.
As well as I do think, given that shout out to 21, he asked over the weekend, when it comes to our topics, how do we pick them? He was like, you start off with a list of things that y'all want to cover, or is it just, a setup? And I was like, well, we start off with a list, but then we don't pay attention to it. So this falls in line with that of we come trusting God to do something with our efforts, our simple offering. And we recognize, as you stated, Jer, there's an opportunity to be a resource by sharing our thoughts, our private conversations, and hopefully something fruitful out of this. So we'll see. You asked me, what day was it? Was it Friday?
Thursday? Was that Thursday or Friday? Yeah, I think it was Thursday.
You asked me about this topic when it was first announced, and it was all over everywhere. Like you couldn't miss it. It was
as well it should be, I think.
It was on every webpage, it was breaking news. I remember when I got in.
It was the only headline when you flipped over to YouTube and they gave top stories. That was the only story.
Which is confusing and at the same time embarrassing from a national standpoint, that this is, how others are seeing us and how, this is the time that we're in. And so that is one of the things that for me was real interesting, where I felt it, because I did get a couple emails and whatnot from individuals outside the country that were like, yeah, it made our news, like front page and headline in other countries. And I was like, oh, wow, that I didn't expect. And I hadn't even thought about. And so I definitely think it's worthy of a conversation when it comes to, what are the first thoughts as well as second and third thoughts?
Yeah. What was your first thought?
My first thought was, this man gets way too much free publicity. That was my first thought. I'm not gonna lie. That was my first thought was, man, like someone needs to paste a I Love Jesus t-shirt on this man, or repent or something, so people can actually come to Christ, as many people are placing their faith in him and believes he's the second coming of something. I don't know if He's out of
right
Revelations or whatnot. But my first thought was, this unfortunately will encourage more people to surround him and defend him and to dig in deeper. That was my first thought. And I sent you even a video of the weekend where they was a clip on CBS. I don't even know. I don't watch CBS. So it was on YouTube. And it was the morning show, the Sunday morning show.
Okay.
And in it, it's one of the reporters went up to Pennsylvania to listen to Trump speak. I think it was the day before the announcement came out. And there were 8,000 individuals that had come to the rally, at least according to the reporter. I was halfway paying attention. And the interviews or the questions that were had as far as how this will impact the election either way was interesting. For those who were up there, and there were no brown people that I saw in this group of any shade, which I thought was interesting because I know even when he went to New York, there was brown people there in the Bronx. And so it was interesting to hear how many of them felt that their liberties were being attacked, how many of them felt that this couldn't continue, and how, if he was convicted, it would be proof that the system is wrong or broken or wicked. And these are...
I fall into that camp. I fall into that camp squarely. I think that it does illustrate a pretty gross, pretty unprecedented breach with the way that rule of law has been done in our country for a long time. So I understand where they're coming from in that respect.
Well, go ahead and share more, because for me, I recognize that the DA brought charges that were then accepted by a courthouse and then affirmed by a jury. So I'm not sure how it brings validity to a broken system. I know it's not a holy system as well.
Sure.
But I don't.
Sure. First and second causes is how I look at this. I'll describe what I'm talking about with an illustration, but I'll say what I mean first so that you can judge whether or not I'm actually speaking about. And I'll tell you first, my immediate response when I heard the verdict was that Bragg just won Trump the election. Honestly, I think that the single biggest thing that could have been done to support, promote the election of Donald Trump in 2024 is the outcome of this case. And
right, and the money that was then raised right after it.
$54 million.
Some crazy amount.
Broke the donations page completely. Yeah, and I'm not in favor of that, by the way. I'll say that too. I'm not in favor of this kind of publicity stirring up and charging and leading to a political decision process at the individual level that's based on a reaction to what the perceived and or real behaviors of another. You know, I think reactionary politics is volatile and that's dangerous. Which is why I'm a conservative. I think unless there's a reason to change something, leave it alone. That's why I'm not a progressive. I'm not, hey, that's been the way for a long time, so we need to change that. That's not my bent. So, but I look at this and I say, there is a federal law that was being purported, or some federal laws that were being purported to be the actual crime that was being committed, and the 34 charges that were brought and then convicted on were made a felony and thereby could be charged at all because they were outside of the statute of limitations for those actions, essentially bookkeeping actions, from what I understand. And I'm not a legal expert, nor am I an expert on this case. They were made felonies by saying that they were being, those actions were being done to support a federal law being broken. And that's, while that may be the case, the state can't bring charges against federal laws being broken. The federal government has to do that, number one, the federal court system. And number two, unless it's been established that an actual crime has in fact been committed, a secondary crime doesn't exist. That's the way that we've practiced law for a long time. And so here's the illustration I use. I watch traffic stop videos to be able to get an idea of what's actually going on in the world, right? And in some of those traffic stop videos, it's pretty clear that there's a fishing expedition going on where the cop's looking for a reason to either cite or arrest. And in some, it's pretty clear this person was like blazing down the road at like 85 miles an hour through like a 45 mile an hour zone. It's like, okay, this person needs to be pulled over and at least given a warning, probably cited for something. But in a number of these videos, you'll see that what happens is there's a questionable reason for pulling the person over. Like maybe there was an infraction, maybe there wasn't. But once the cop gets to the car, the cop is looking for more to go on. And even if the person, let me just give a real, not a real scenario, but real details here. A person is pulled over because maybe they match the description of someone who is being sought. Okay, the cop can come to the door and say, hey, Mr. Safarati, I've pulled you over because there was a crime that happened and you match the description. It's a Hispanic white male of about 40, 45 years old, about 300 pounds and bald, blind in one eye. You fit the description. So I need to find out who you are and what you were doing 20 minutes ago. That's an investigation. That's perfectly legitimate. He can then, demanding my ID, I can say, sure, here's my ID. And he can find a reason to arrest me if I don't cooperate. There's flexibility here. He can charge me with impeding investigation if I say, take too long to produce my ID, or if I give false information to him in the course of this investigation. And he can pull me out of the car. And if I take too long getting out of the car, he can charge me with resisting without violence. Now, that resisting without violence is a secondary charge to an arrestable offense. And that's the point I'm making here. In order for there to be resistance of arrest, there has to be a legal reason to arrest someone. And without the legal reason to arrest someone, without the probable cause to pull someone over, there cannot be a charge of, well, you resisted, therefore you're going to jail. Now, that is not just. And in this case, the probable cause, the initial offense for which this person is in the court system, is not supported by the governing body that should be bringing this charge if it's going to be brought. And it hasn't been agreed to even what that is, which is why at this point, most of the things that I'm seeing say that there's a really good chance that this conviction is going to be overturned on appeal because of the unprecedented nature of the way that this particular case was adjudicated on those points in particular. Now, that's my read on this, which is why I do think that this is, if what I just said is in fact what happened, then this is unprecedented, and this does represent what's commonly now being called lawfare, where the legal system is being used in order to wage a type of warfare against individuals or groups of people, which has always gone on and has always been wrong.
Okay.
So that's where I'm sitting.
Got it. So system is broken. You see its brokenness, and therefore You don't agree with the results?
I'm saying the system is broken, and if a system is based on a commitment to a value like truth or justice, to act in a way that is not in keeping with truth or justice, not only invalidates whatever decision might be made, but on a grander scale, it invalidates the institution itself that is purporting to do it.
So where does the jury fit in? Like, why would they co-sign then? Or I would think that would be presented somewhere by the other team, by somebody.
I can't speak to that at all. I can't speak to that at all. I can say this. I think it's beyond contestation that Donald Trump incites very deep feelings one way or another that may go beyond rational connection, which is to say Trump derangement syndrome, I think really does exist. And I think it exists on both sides of the aisle. I think there are those who would take a bullet for the man. Mm-hmm. He walks on water. And there are those who, if he says the sky is blue, are going to argue that he's trying to, it's fascist to say the sky's blue. So is it possible that a jury selected in an area where that is historically very anti-Trump would be anti-Trump? Yeah, it's conceivable to me. I can't say more than that.
Would
You've got a question coming, but everything I've said so far is not actually my greater concern as I'm thinking down the road to my kids. Mm-hmm. My greater concern here is that when I say this is an inflection point, it's not because this is the first time that a shadow has been cast on a sitting or former U.S. president. Okay, that's happened in the past. This is the first time that a sitting or former president has been charged criminally with a felony in a way that demonstrates a consistency with the very polarized partisan politics.
It's so sweet.
What is?
Well, what? The way you said that. That's so nice.
Oh, well, thank you. I was talking to someone the other day. He says he was at his physical therapist, and the physical therapist said to him, hey, you don't seem to be in quite as much pain as you were last time. And his response through gritted teeth was, I wouldn't say it's awesome. That's pretty much where I am.
When you say an inflection point, the reason why I brought up the CBS video was in the video, you're able to hear that many people believe that if Donald Trump isn't made president, that there should be war. That there should be.
Can I go ahead and state that I don't stand in that camp, just for clarity's sake?
Well, it's interesting because again, you're seeing thousands of people, and this is a video in Pennsylvania. You know that they're clearly supporters. They've come out. They're wearing all the swag,
right?
And it's mind-boggling when you hear people of faith talking about their faith being attacked because he is being treated unfairly.
I think that's preposterous on the face of it. I think it's absolutely preposterous and shows such a complete lack of biblical understanding and fidelity. I am embarrassed and ashamed.
I agree. I agree, but I also recognize that I need to better understand individuals who feel and think in such a way. And I don't have those individuals in my world. I'm trying.
Sure.
I'm, we're having the conversation to wrestle it out. And when you talk about an inflection point, the amount of money that came in, the idea now that Trump is this martyr, makes it a lot easier for Trump 2.0. And
yes, it does.
I know that was for me, a prayerful concern is that, and I don't say this flippantly or silly in any way, but I question whether America can survive someone who is seeking not to ever leave the White House.
Do you really think that's what his goal is?
I don't know. And I say that because I look at Israel and I look at the current leader there, and I know that the charges that were outstanding before October took place, October 7th. And I know that he was being tried for a lot of things, and a lot of things were hanging on. And you could clearly tell that much of the power that Mr. Netanyahu was striving to hold was out of a desire not to have to deal with certain things. And he changed the courts. He encouraged certain new laws, as well as the stripping of some old ones, to make it so that he would be less likely to be engaged in a certain way after he steps down. But he is consistent in the one more day kind of a mindset, the one more day kind of a just let me stay in power. And
right.
I look at that.
You can see that tracking on the DJ.
I can see that when you've fallen or have a people that are following you that encourage you to do whatever your heart desires, that it becomes easy to think that you're the center of the world, like Nebuchadnezzar.
True.
And when you've made it to that rarefied air, you begin to suffer from a certain type of hypoxia, where the full mental thinking is not clear. And I unfortunately believe Trump doesn't have people that actually care for him around him, to be honest. I think he's also been able to make it clear that he doesn't want those people around him. They were around him for the first term, right. And I think they helped him with a lot of things, but now those individuals desire not to be around him. And they've made that clear through writing books and being on every channel they can be on. And I know that God's in charge, and I know most people expect America to live forever and even believe it. America's in Revelation. And I go, I don't know about all that. I know that our a season
unless
under
it's
the sun
dragon coming out of the sea with the harlot on its back. That could be America.
Well, it's our season under the sun is just that, a season, and I think we often assume that democracy cannot break because we're in a good season, when the reality is that democracies before us have failed, and there are many that are failing now. And I think we lie to ourselves if we don't wrestle with the how do I live out my faith outside of what I would consider a comfortable, space. I'm not worrying. I am concerned. I shared this concern with, some of the stuff that was happening when we talked about the Supreme Court justice stuff. And, and it's interesting to hear you talk about it from a different perspective, because that what you were sharing is was part of my concern even then.
I hear that and I take that seriously. But I look at that whole thing. I look at that whole question this way. The thing that really gives our nation strength is the consistency. It's not the transfer of power. The transfer of power is a sign that the rule of law is the foundation on which our community runs and is guided and is held accountable. And I look at Netanyahu, and I'm like toenail deep in the politics in Israel pre and post October 7. There's a lot I don't know about what was going on there. I know a lot more about what's going on here in the States, and I'm a lot closer to it. I look at Trump and I say, yeah, I agree with everything you said. In this first time around in the White House, he did have people in the Oval Office who I believe pushed back on him. And they either got pushed out or they left. And I think that Donald Trump, because he is a truly self-referential narcissist, if he is elected again, will surround himself with patsies and yes men. I fully expect that's what he will do. He will feel that he has earned the right to have people who are only going to support him without question, and anyone who does question will find their head on a spike. And that is a concern because of the character of our leaders should always be a concern to us, because out of their character they will act.
Well, we talked about this the other day when you were talking about the role in a leader in the church versus the layman. There's a responsibility on both sides, with an understanding, as you shared, that top down really does make an impact.
Absolutely.
Like it impacts the culture significantly. If we can be in a space where we identify more with a political party than our pastor, and definitely more than our Lord, I struggle with that.
I completely agree. But from where I'm sitting, this is my perspective. And again, I don't have people who are pushing hard against this perspective. But for me, the idea that Donald Trump trying to remain, if he were elected in November, trying to remain in power for a third term or past the end of his second term, I find patently absurd. I think that the way that our nation has been constituted, the separation of power that exists, the responsibilities and authorities that are vested at several different levels in various areas, will make it impossible for that to happen, at least right now. I'm not saying at some point in the future this couldn't happen.
And see, for me, I
don't think
I
it can
view
happen
it as
now at all.
I view it as you're putting your trust in the institution, whereas I see the institution made up of people, and people are broken. And so I don't see it as something that can so easily stand when it's people, again, that make the institution. And that is what allows for a double concern for me when it comes to what do our loved ones, our children, family members, friends, neighbors see and understand when it comes to sitting down to look for a leader.
Sure.
What is being projected? And as it was interesting, as I listened to the video, I played it twice, and I listened to other ones as well, but this one's the one I played over the weekend. There was a lot of people projecting their faith onto him, and it was just like,
in what way? Or were they?
Well, one of the questions was, is he a Christian? And
okay,
that was
I'll answer this one. He's a sinner, like all Christians.
Yes, but it was this. That wasn't the answer. The answer was, I believe he is, and that was the common answer amongst those who were there, and it was accepted as truth. Like, if I believe he is, then it must be true. Versus,
Right.
I think he is because he feeds the homeless or
Right.
helps the needy. I believe he is because he's got 3 hospitals with his name on it. He does not.
Right.
You know, something where you can say, okay, there is a fact behind this. There is a
Root and fruit.
correct.
Yeah.
And that to me seems and feels like a projection where you just go, you know, I don't have a problem with you voting for him, but why does he have to be a Christian? Like,
Yeah, I don't even understand how that enters. I mean, I understand how that enters in, but the certainty with which some of these things, which are not relevant at all to the question of, are the policies that he's promoting, are the behaviors that have been observed good in a leader for our country?
And see that's one of the things where when you talk about, you know, a change and you say, hey, what are the policies that, you know, you're considering? I don't understand. And again, I live in a very different world. I don't understand how, if you listen to his speech after he was convicted in the Trump Hotel, his speech was there. I just don't understand where you hear the gospel.
Yeah, it's not there at all.
Like, I don't understand where you hear love. I don't hear.
You know what's really missing, and this is what I want our kids to hear. What's really missing there was, I was a fool.
I'm sorry.
And I stepped outside of my marriage. And this is what happens when you do that. When you heap fire into your lap, you get burned. That's why the Proverbs tells us over and over again, flee from sexual immorality. I didn't do that. And whether or not I committed these crimes, as I'm being accused and not convicted of, I did do this. I was wrong. I was a fool. And if you follow in my footsteps, you will follow in my folly. I've never heard that.
Well, and I didn't hear the whole Christian aspect of this forgiveness at the cross. I've been forgiven.
Absolutely.
Like, I repented of this to my wife, and I've been forgiven, and this makes no sense because of X, Y, Z. Yeah. That is hard for me to understand how many others, and I hate when we have this others, because these are siblings in Christ that are you know, attending church and singing. And again, they're not a part of my world. I don't know them, and I don't know where they're hiding, and I need to find them.
It's so easy to generalize the unnamed other.
Exactly. Like, I don't like this other. There is, like I said, a projection of faith that I can't get my head around, and it's to the point of idolatry that I just don't understand.
I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. And I've seen that. That has been the norm for as long as I have been old enough to pay attention to politics.
Yeah,
it didn't matter who the candidate was.
I don't think this
didn't matter who the voter was.
No, I remember very similar even in high school, where there was, you know, if you know, very much so, if you didn't vote Republican, then you couldn't be a Christian. I mean, I had to laugh because I watched a Biden video where he was being interviewed by an individual in New York. And this was, I want to say, last year, where Biden had told this brother that if you voted for anyone else, then you couldn't be black.
I remember that.
And
it seemed a little bit possessive.
Yes, not only yes, we'll stick with that because
it's not exactly awesome.
It was quite condescending and quite just to keep it lowbrow, but quite masterish, and it was not appropriate. I'm doubly, if not triply, concerned that both sides now have gotten to the space of, again, misunderstanding where Christ fits in the middle. Like, uh, I see, and I'm gonna just start throwing stones at everything, I guess.
Go for it. Again,
I see.
I'm looking at this episode as being totally different than anything else.
I know. I see pastors wanting posses and not the pastor. I'm seeing
they don't want posses. They want
a crew. They want flunkies. They want whatever you call them. Oh, that's what it is. So I'm reading a book now called, what's the name of it? I just started it, and come on! I gotta remember the name of it. The Unseen Leader. Okay. And in it, Martin Gutman, Gutmann, talks about how hard it is to be a real leader, one that doesn't make waves, versus one that makes noise and always is attracting attention. He just says it's easy to be a squeaky wheel. Like, that's easy. It's easy to destroy stuff. It's easy to tear down. It's easy to be a critic, which I agree fully. That's easy. It's hard to do something well and make it look easy. Like, that's hard. You see someone run a marathon and they run it quickly and you just go, whoa. Then you go outside for a run for a mile and you go, man, that's they made it look easy and I'm dying with the mile. And he just talks about how we should celebrate those type of leaders and not celebrate the ones that make a ton of noise. And I've been wrestling with that the last 24 hours, 48 hours, and looking, just thinking from Jesus coming to earth. He wasn't the splashiest of people, alone, definitely not the splashiest of gods. Right. He was the God and is the God, the one true God. And yet, the Pharisees missed him.
Right.
Sadducees missed him. The ones that had been studying the most missed him. And as I, look at this moment in time, I really wrestle with, okay, God, I'm sure there's a lot that I'm missing. And I know you're working. I trust you. I love you. But my big thing is I don't want to miss you. So, yeah.
At the risk of totally missing God. The perspective I have here is, we did talk about this some with the Supreme Court. I think you and I still see that somewhat differently. When you say that the institutions are made up of people, I firmly agree with that. And that's one of the reasons that I look at this and I say both this is an inflection point and I don't have a fear for our future. Because the presidency doesn't wield unlimited power.
Yeah, I don't have a fear. Like I said, concern.
Concern is always legitimate, especially when you're talking about power, because the nature of power is to seek more power.
Yeah, right? I've lost no sleep. I'm not doing a sermon against Trump or anything like that.
When you listen to what's being said in the atmosphere around us from both sides, it's if person X or Y gets elected,
then
it's
the world will take place. Yes.
And it's like, okay. I don't have that fear, and I'll tell you why. Because we still have people who have given their lives and their solemn oaths to defend the Constitution. And just like we've seen in movies like, I don't know, U-571 or what was that one with, never mind, doesn't matter.
Okay.
But you yourself were in the military, right? So yes. There's a safeguard that when you, as a junior officer, take an oath at each promotion in rank, you give the same oath again, and it's not to carry out the orders of the people above you. It's to defend the Constitution and to uphold it. And if the orders from the person above you run contrary to the oath that you've taken, it is your sworn obligation to resist them. Not only do we have that in the military, but we have that in all of the public servants that take this oath in and that's like 99% of the administrative state at this point, right? And I trust in the, I guess what I would say, absorption quotient, that there can be a really, really bad, very badly intended leader who wants to consolidate power to himself, and he will be thwarted by the absorption quotient of the people who have sworn to uphold the Constitution. Now, that only exists insofar as the people who are around maintain that obligation themselves. And the reason that I believe that this is an inflection point is because this is the first time that we've seen a very questionable judicial process brought against a national leader or former national leader in a way that I think opens up the door to this becoming the norm. And I think this becoming the norm is the greater danger to our nation. They're all around the world in despotic regimes as well as in republics and democracies. You can see examples of the leaders where it does become an issue of whoever is the next leader is going to clean house from whoever was before them. And I don't mean clean house, get rid of the cabinet. I mean clean house, throw them into jail or worse. And our country has always not been that intentionally.
Time out for Black people. It has.
Tell me more about that.
There's under Jim Crow laws. There's some good history we'll have to get you into, but under Jim Crow laws, there were plenty of stories as well as community activities where things were ignored that were completely illegal, as well as, I mean, even on the Eastern Shore, if you want to go look at the history of lynching there, it is not a place where systems have always been safe for everyone.
Agreed. I'm not suggesting that is the case.
Yeah. So it is one of those things where I do agree with you that it is very different because not everyone gets to experience it, but it is not, and it has not been true that for everyone, the law was equal.
I completely agree with that. And I am not suggesting that. I was not intending to say that at all. I completely agree with what you said. And the injustices that have been carried out, whether or not we are aware of them, are egregious and this is where I stand, are completely contrary to who we are as a nation. And that's a part of why it is so abhorrent, is because it not only was allowed, but it was allowed and it was promoted by those who, as I said a moment ago, had sworn fidelity to a set of principles, which they then totally ignored. And I agree, it happens, has happened, it will continue to happen. And we've been working for a long time to recognize, take it back.
To address
in a country that's 250 years old, I'm not sure we can say we've been doing anything for a long time.
We've been working to address it. There has been significant change,
absolutely,
but it is not a perfect country, and that's the reality. We are striving to get to better.
There's one of the things I'd want to say to our kids that I think will be, this is, okay, Sam, Tirza, the rest of you, you all know who you are, and we love you dearly. Seriously, I'm so proud of you guys. You are a blessing to me and Uncle Dave.
And to me. I love you guys.
Joy to us. And our prayer is for you to experience not just the freedom and joy of life, but the fulfillment of following after God. and of
genuinely following, not religiosity.
as Scripture says, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, tearing down every stronghold that sets itself up against the knowledge of Christ. That's what we want for you. And if you're listening to this and we're gone, or we're old and we've gotten senile,
we are old,
acting crotchety like we are now, no, this is what we want, and this is why we're doing this. Now, having said that, this is me saying, yes, hold me accountable. This is check my work here, see if this is proven out. As a counselor and as a pastor, one of the dictums that I've come to live by is that when I hear party A accuse party B of a future impending wrong action, I've learned to see that party A is the one who will actually do that. So I listen to the prognostication from both sides of the aisle. And the way I hear it is if a person says, if person, J is elected, they will do X, Y, or Z. My immediate conclusion is if this person who made the statement was elected, they would do X, Y, or Z. And I listen very closely to these accusations, to these prophecies, if you will, because I think that they tell us a whole lot about the individual who's speaking and where they are, because the truth is, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And my experience is what I'm most familiar with. So when I see you doing something, I assume you're doing it for the reasons I would do it. I assume you're going to act in a situation the way I would, because after all, everyone's just like me, right? So when I look down the road and I look at the if-then scenarios, and I'll say scare tactics, lighting one's hair on fire in order to, whether it's gain publicity or gain support that's going on, I fundamentally believe that those who are the most concerned about the destruction of our government, the destruction of our way of the code of laws that we exist upon, are the ones who would in fact do that if they had the opportunity. Now, I might be wrong there, and that's where I say, hey, hold me accountable. See if I was right, see if I was wrong. That's what's most concerned me is the as you said, Dave, the intensity of the statements being made from both sides is normal. Okay, that's historical. Since the beginning of our elections, with the exception of the election of George Washington, ever after that, every election has taken place, and the pitch has been fevered as to what would happen if Thomas Jefferson were elected as opposed to John Adams. And it's like, come on, that's really? But they had very, very distinct views on how government should act. And they had very different views on what freedom meant. And this is something that we've gotten into in the past. I'm sure we'll get into in the future, what freedom actually is. And we'll go to Galatians when we get there.
There's more, Ephesians. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't really want to end here, man. I guess I want to ask you this question.
No, we got to end. It's 11:04, whatever time it is.
I know that, but I want to ask you this question to end it, to land on. Open myself up. What encouragement, exhortation would you give to me in the hearing of my kids? In light of what we've discussed.
Our culture has sped up a lot with the advancements of information and technology and whatnot. And so I would, and I mean, I've even said this to myself as we've been talking, I think I think we are being habituated to something that is quite dangerous, and we're often placing our trust in it. So we need to take time, I think, daily to recenter and spend time, with Christ, with his word, with the living Spirit, so that we don't become fearful, so that we don't lose sight of our real hope. And so, if I was giving you any counsel, just as I give myself counsel, it is to engage with those who we put in that other category, because that is what Christ did. Is to love them well and to not dismiss them, to strive to understand them out of love, not out of I need to fix them, and with an understanding that I'm secure in my faith, and so I don't need to save them. God does that. And so, that would be my encouragement.
Thank you. Well, as we say often here, I've got work to do. So you kids, you can hold us accountable. You can ask me how I did with this.
Yeah, same here.
I'll seek to be honest with you in every way. Dave, enjoyed this conversation, rambling and extended as it is.
Yeah, we took a while.
Dear listener, thank you for sticking in with us.
Thank you, 21.
Thank you, 21. Share it with a friend, maybe.
I'm sure he will. I don't know about the other.
All right. We love you guys. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.